Welcome to the Liz McMullen Show, episode 82. I have a returning guest who's absolutely awesome, Chris Paynter. Thanks for coming back on the show.
Well, thank you for having me, Liz, and thank you for the compliment.
So we had spoken early on in my show history 2 years ago, and there was something unusual that happened that, you won an award for a book that I lauded you for.
Yeah. So you're like, we had said at the time maybe you would be my good luck charm, and I think you were. So
you just need
to carry on for the rest of my writing career. I'll have to keep coming back.
Sure. Oh my goodness. I love your wife too. She's awesome, Phyllis.
Oh, I love her too.
Just a little.
I know. Well, everybody that meets her, I said that in one of my acknowledgments that you only need to meet her once to know how fantastic she is. So,
and she is so smitten. I remember back, I think it was in Dallas, you were singing in karaoke, and she was just so enamored of you. Like she was like, she was your groupie. Like she's just, and she's like, isn't she just so handsome?
I know, she does that to me all the time, and I'm like, honey, as long as you think so, that's all that matters. So.
Exactly. In some way you remind me of my parents, and well, they're further along than you are, but they've been together since they were 13 and 14.
Oh, wow.
Since 1963. And it's so funny when I've showed my mom slideshows or whatnot that include my daddy, and she looks at it and she goes, I just want to kiss him. My mom's so adorable. Like she was a nursery school teacher for 30 years, and she has an innate cuteness about her. But I just think that's so fantastic that all these years later, I just want to give him a kiss. Isn't he cute?
Yep.
It's a good thing. You have a very unique writing style. You have, I love when there are new plots out there. I love when there are new devices. And I always feel like what you do is fresh. And if there's anything that encapsulates all that you do, it's like, I can tell you have a big heart.
Yeah, thank you.
And it comes through no matter whom you write, all the characters. I can, I was like, this writer, she's got a big heart. And I like that.
Yeah, I always try to write from my heart. And it's something that Phyllis and I've talked about before. As long as I keep doing that, then you don't worry about the reviews or any of the other stuff. Just write from the heart, and that everything will be okay. So,
yeah, I've actually recommended, like sometimes I do some mentoring myself, and I recommended you to a few friends who are writing historical, like unpublished authors who are endeavoring. And I was like, well, you need to read Survive by the Longtime Companion. I hope I didn't mangle that title too much. But I love the device that you use, the journals, and the way, it's very easy to slow down a book with a flashback or with a journal or with a letter. And instead, you manage to keep things moving between the two. And that's hard to do. It's like, if you want to see somebody do this well, you need to check out Chris Paynter's book. You need to look at Sandra Moran's Letters Never Sent. And, there's certain go-tos. And I really felt that you carried that off very well.
Yeah, when I wrote that book, I had debated for a while whether or not to write it, basically two different books, have it, write the diary entries separate, and then write the present day characters separate, and then mesh them after I was done. But then I realized that wasn't going to work, and I wanted it to be fresh for Bailey and Chelsea when Eleanor was telling her story. And so it became more of like I was listening to Eleanor while she was telling her story along with Bailey and Chelsea, and I think it made the reactions more real.
Yeah, I also like that that she was a stubborn old bird.
Yeah.
a very glamorous one. But you know that she's like these two people. One's a researcher, and I think the other one's a historian or a professor. And both were interested in this actress, and they found like when the actress had passed, that she was survived by her longtime companion, and people were all over her to tell her story because this is like the golden age of cinema and whatnot. And she's like, well, on one condition, you both have to be here. And you can't bring anything home with you. And you have to read it to each other. And I was like, damn. Yeah. Because they're like, we can't say no because this is a great opportunity. But they were two women who had dated previously and had broken up with each other. So there was like a lot of built-in tension. And then I was like, this woman is the bomb.
Yeah. And actually, I think... Well, she's always going to be, I think, my favorite character now since I wrote that book. But I'm pretty sure I kind of carried her over to And a Time to Dance with the aunt Tess because she was kind of feisty like that too. And I think I missed Eleanor enough that I didn't even realize I was doing it when I wrote And a Time to Dance. That she had some moments.
I love those kind of characters, and I'm like you. There's a book that I've just, that I'm written. I haven't, it's not yet gone to a publisher. But one of the characters, well, there were two, are two beautiful white-haired women who must be in their, some point in their 60s, if not 70s. And they're this fabulous couple. And like Demi is tall and graceful with this like great blend of like gray hair and white hair, and she has it on top of her head, and she's the yoga instructor, and she's this just earthy great mama. And then her girlfriend's this somewhat glamorous but still earth mama, like gorgeous woman. I was like, oh my goodness. And what's really funny is the book that I'm reading is a YA, and they kiss each other, and the Viewpoint character, Kayla, is like, what the fuck? Like, part of her is like, lesbians. And, like, the other part of her is like, old people kissing passionately.
Oh, that's funny.
But, like, Sophia, who's, like, the mother of Tia, who's the single mom who has the foster home, Sophie she's just this wonderful earthly character, and most of the people have abilities, and but she doesn't really have as many, and so she was, Kayla's still dealing with the fact that everybody can read minds and that kind of stuff, and she's like, did you read mine? She's like, no, I just know teenagers. I can see what you were thinking. She's like, no, I don't have that ability. I just know teenagers. I know what was going on in your head. I could see it running across your face.
Yeah, once you get the hang of teenagers, you can figure it out pretty easy.
Oh yeah, and it was just so wonderful, and I liked having these fabulous, well-rounded octogenarian characters, and they're just so fantastic, and I love them, and they kind of peek in and out. They're not like the main characters or anything, but I was just like, I love these old women. They're awesome. Yeah. They're awesome. And I was like, well, you know what? This needs to be in the book, even though I'm sure the teenagers reading, I'm like, oh my God, old people kissing. I'm like, screw you. They're allowed to have sexuality. So like, I dig that. And that was important to me. I don't know if you think about it, but some authors have mentioned to me that I think it was Lacey Gardner, and she said she was at this, reading and talk, and she had asked people what they wanted to see. And the women said, they're like, we'd really like to see women who are not in their 30s or 40s be in love. Right. And we're just not seeing these stories. And so Lacey wrote this fantastic story about like these two women. I believe they were in their 80s, and they were a couple. And I was like, awesome. So in the back of my head, I've always like, okay, I have to have like two older women who are having a fantastically vibrant sex life, like not in a graphic way, but in a, oh yeah, that was a real kiss. It wasn't a motherly, sisterly kiss.
No, I know it was one thing I wanted to make sure of in Survived by a Longtime Companion is that I did continue their love scenes into their 70s. You know, I at least had one of those in there.
And,
so,
it's so important because almost anytime you do something unusual or something that's not common but necessary, I say that you make someone visible.
Mm-hmm.
And men in our society can be seen as sexual beings even if, like, they're walking with a cane,
Right.
But women are often relegated sexless after a certain age. And I think by having characters like yours and mine, it makes people visible.
Right.
And no, it doesn't have to be two old, doddering women who are no longer sexually active, but are good friends.
Yeah.
No, they're passionately in love with each other and they're role models, so keep your eyes open. So yeah, I dig that. So one of your new books is called To Love Free. Mm-hmm. And I really liked your preface because it was from the point, and it took a second, but it was from the point of view of a dolphin. And I was like, this is so rad.
Yeah. Well, when I did that, I thought, I bet my editor right away is going to say, no. No. But that was the only place in the whole book, where I had it like that. And I just thought it was important to show what his purpose was. And showing up at the Cove when he did in Islamorada. So
yeah, I really enjoyed that because it wakes up your childlike brain. Mm-hmm. And when I was a kid, I think we all go through phases. And I thought I wanted to be a marine biologist because I love dolphins. Mm-hmm. So I was like, dolphins! Oh!
There's a dolphin! And I know I've always loved dolphins, and I just, when that idea came to me, I'd started writing that when Phyllis was going through cancer treatment, and I thought, I don't know, just all of a sudden I thought, why don't I have a dolphin, be there to help both main characters heal, one from the loss of her wife to cancer, and the other healing from actually going through the treatment and being okay, but she still had to go through the treatment. So I was glad that I wrote some of that when Phyllis was actually going through treatment. I did a lot of stopping and starting on that because there were times I couldn't write. And I was glad I did write parts of it when I did because I couldn't remember the details of her treatment. And it surprised me how detailed part of that was as far as the chemo. And what all, you have to go through to get all set up, before they even start the drug, the IV for the drug. And so anyway, I was glad I had that down. And
yeah, I have to say, and I'm not spoiling anything because this is in the beginning, folks, so don't yell at me. I have to say, I was really pleased that you had somebody like Madison who lost her partner and really had, in many ways, given up on life and love. And to bring somebody into her life who had the same disease would have made her run for the hills as far away as she can, and it would never happen, and it was a terrible idea and whatnot. And I thought that was a very unique choice, and I kind of liked that flavor to it.
Yeah, and I think another part of her, I'm sorry, Buddy's trying to break into the room here. I put up a barrier, but he came in anyway.
Her dog, by the way, folks.
Yeah, it's not a guy living with us. But anyway, I think part of Madison's reluctance too in the relationship part is trying to protect the feelings of her daughter, and being afraid that something could possibly happen to Gabrielle that happened to her wife, and she just it's hard for her to know if it's okay to move on. So that's where the dolphin comes in.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, I thought it was great to have, her name's Montana, but they call her Mo. She's 9. And I think oftentimes, because I have done a lot of work with early childhood. And I think oftentimes adults discount children, even toddlers. You know, they have brains in those little bodies. And 9 is a very solid age. It's like the cusp of teenagehood. It's like tweensies, and they really know what's going on. They're paying attention, And Mo sees her mom, and she sees what she's going through. And I really love that she's such a good kid. Like when you introduce Gabrielle, like she's having a hard time getting her stuff in her groceries in the house, and then this little ball of energy, Mo comes, I'll help you, and then she goes, do you have cancer? And she's just like, oh.
It's like nobody asks you questions like that, It's just a typical kid thing, and especially since her mom, went through the same stuff, and and I just could see, a kid doing that age and not think anything of it.
I know she's and at first, like, she's like, oh my God, it must look like crap. But no, that happened to my mom. And she's like, oh yeah, but she died. Oh
yeah. It's like, it's just having a little conversation.
And it's all heart, and I think children make you live more so in the moment, and children are so sensitive. They can kind of see when things are going on. Even a toddler can sense somebody being sad and like crawl in their lap and, put their head on their chest and tell, it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
Like they're sentient beings, even young. And so I think it's always cool when you have a kid in there who just kind of cuts to shit. Yeah. She's polite, but she's like, gets to the heart of the matter. Mama, you're not fine. I thought you were going to be honest with me.
Yeah. Well, and then I think that's why I wanted to have that scene where, and I won't give too much away by saying this, I don't think, where Madison has her nightmare. And Mo comes in and, treats her, she's like an adult, and comforting her mom. And you could tell how much she went through. She's like a little adult when it bothers Madison that she's so grown up acting because of what happened to her mom. But
some kids are just like that, though. When I was tutoring and babysitting this kid for about 4 years, and he was a boy, and he was always his current age. Like, there was no precocious. He was always kind of like, he was a good kid. He was great with math and, had other challenges, but he was always a boy. He was never, 3 going on 30. Like, he was definitely his age. And then there are other kids who even, like, they're 3 and they see the world, in a way. I don't think it even means something like old soul. They're just some people, who develop mentally even at a young age. They're very precocious. They see people and emotions in a way that as adults we will prevaricate. We will gloss over. We will ignore the fact that somebody looks like crap. And the little kid will go, you don't look like you're having a good day, Mommy.
You gotta be honest with me.
Mommy, I don't believe you. You're not saying things. You're saying one thing, but you're thinking another thing. It's like, oh, crap. It's great. We all have these kind of, as writers, it depends. Some people are planners, some people are pansters. And I like to I like to be like plan and plot to a certain degree, but some things are surprise. Sometimes characters say things that surprise me.
Yeah, well, that in this book, and this particular character was named by I think it was. Gosh, I can't remember now, but it was one of those where someone wins the rights to name a character in your book, and she came up with the name of Syndra, and I thought, oh my God, can we have a different name? And I just, I thought this, okay. So I don't know if you noticed how many times I shortened it down to Sin, but eventually it grew on me, and I didn't expect that character to have as much as she did in the book and be such an influence for Madison as her sister.
Well, what's kind of rad is that even when she's getting introduced, even though she's this delicate little pixie-looking character, she's as strong as you wrote strong as a day-old pot of coffee, and I was like,
yeah, she's like a little spitfire, and then she's always staying on Madison's case about dating and getting back out there, and I got to have her say some snarky stuff too, so it was fun. You always, I don't know if you're like that, Liz, where you always like to have a character that says things that you want to say, so you get to stick them in a book, and so I had fun with that.
Yeah, I feel like I know where something's going. I know what an end is going to be, and when I was co-writing this book, it was a challenge because we have two different creative styles. But even though we didn't outline completely, whenever we'd get to a certain point, and we'd had a discussion on the phone for hours, and we talk about things, and you write this chapter, I write that chapter, you focus on this, I'll focus on that, and then what I'd do is I'd go into Word, and I'd create a document, and I'd create an outline, and I'd have things like, Liz needs to write blah, 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 blah. This needs to happen in this scene. And co-author needs to write this. And this is what we talked about happening in that scene. And so even though it's not a hardcore planner, I was like, every once in a while we'd get to a point where I was like, okay, this is where we've been. This is where we're going. This is what we discussed so we don't lose anything. And then Shazam. And I think that it just helped because just to have it there and then you can refer back to it. And it's not like tying yourself to anything.
Right.
But when you write dialogue, sometimes it can be so fun to see what pops out of their mouths.
Yeah. I have a lot of fun writing dialogue, and I think I said that before in interviews. I've always felt that was my strong suit. And so I just had fun with Syndra keeping the story. It was real, but it was also lighthearted. Mm-hmm. And I think when you tell someone you wrote a book about, a character who had partner of a character who had died of cancer, plus the other main character is like going through treatment, and you're like, oh my God, I don't want to read a book about cancer. But then I try to say, no, it's about hope, it's about survival, it's about learning to love again, and it has light-hearted moments, and that it was a little bit iffy there at the beginning when the book first came out, and then kind of word of mouth came out that it was more than, it was a romance, and it wasn't as heavy as what it sounded.
Well, I'll be straight with you, even though I'm a lesbian. When you gave me the books to review for our first interview, and I saw the title "Survived by Her Longtime Companion," I'm like, oh fuck.
Yeah. I know some people hesitated reading that book just because of the title, but once I came up with that title, I'm thinking that was it. I couldn't. That actually got me to write that book. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I've had people tell me that they hesitated reading that book because of that. So
I was like, egads. I don't know if I can, but obviously because the work that I do is as a reviewer, I'm so glad that I had to review it because I would have missed out on a lot of really interesting things. And life is messy.
Right.
And, the romance between the older women had a lot of not great things happen in there, but they survived and muscled on. And when she tries to find out why these two younger women were unable to be successful in their relationship, she's like, seriously? That was your problem?
Yeah, I know. That was it. I just thought she stomped off, when they first said why they didn't stay together, and they're like, well, I'm sorry we upset you. And she's like, you didn't upset you, upset me. I'm angry. And so that's when she, got the idea to have them read the diaries out loud so that they could see what they went through as a couple.
And it's like the character's very sophisticated, very polite, British, but still that acerbic thing. And I felt like it was the equivalent of telling the two young women, you lightweights.
Yeah. You know what the hell we went through, back in the 50s and early 60s, you had it easy.
What, you guys weren't seeing each other often enough because you were working in two different places?
Yeah.
Is that why you're not together?
Yeah.
What is wrong with you?
Yeah.
But I think, just like I had mentioned earlier, like that everything that you write has heart in it. And I believe that by sharing her past, she gave them an opportunity to fall in love with each other again in a much more real manner.
Mm-hmm.
And I liked that because it felt organic.
Yeah. I know the original draft, I think I had Bailey and Chelsea get back together too quickly. And that was something that Nan Dunn said, you need to make it harder for them because it's not like that they can just fall back into where they were before. So I had a couple more arguments between them, and like at the first one when Chelsea says, they had that argument out in front of the house. When Chelsea was pissed off because Bailey was there at the same time to do this interview, and then when you think they're going to get together, and the pizza delivery guy comes, and that all they just Bailey pulls away there. So it's just that's when you have a good editor that says, no, you need to make them work at it a little bit. So.
Well, the other thing, there is a big difference between things that happen and need to happen in a book and how things function in real life. Not that there can't be parody, but in order for a book to function, there has to be tension, there has to be the near misses, there has to be the disagreements, the arguments, or the ex that shows up unexpectedly, that kind of like they're just about to kiss and then the ex shows up
and the evil ex is
bursting in on the seam and try and use her sexuality to get you to do what she wants her to do.
I had the same thing. Nan say the same thing about Eleanor and Daphne when they were in England. She said you made that too easy for them there, and so I had a little bit. She had some suggestions, and I tied some of that in there with Daphne going through pneumonia and all that.
I like it not being simple, honestly, and I feel let down when things are too easy or they're too pat or dried and tied up in a nice little bow. Because real life is messy.
Yeah.
We make mistakes. We say the wrong things. We don't make the best choices for the people in our lives. But there has to be like a moving on. Like there's this book that I recently read, and this character is about to go on a date, and she looks so handsome and like really, went out of her way to look dapper. And then her ex-girlfriend, who it was more like an affair that she was with because the other woman was married and would never be with her, but it was kind of like an addiction, and she showed up. and they like she's resistant, and then they, the woman kisses her and they go into the bedroom, and the butch undresses and throws the neatly clothed stuff on the ground, and then you're like, no. You're like, no. And then, and then she's trying to get dressed again, and she's got all these marks on her body, and I was just like, did you really? Like, that just seemed like an irrevocable thing. And then at the end of the book, and that's why I won't tell you what book it is. And then at the end of the book, it turns out that at the last minute that she backed out, and that her lover marked her up so that it would ruin her chances with this other woman. Mm-hmm. So like the bite marks or the claw marks or whatever was like, very mean retaliation to kind of like, okay, now that I've marked you, nobody's going to want you. Mm-hmm. How dare you not want me? I was like, it's one of those things where a selfish person is like, oh, I'll keep you on. I'll never give you the status of my partner. I'll never leave my husband because you don't have money and status, and that's important to me. But how dare you leave me for somebody else?
Right.
But that moment, I was like, oh my God, for real? You're going to have sex with her? Like, you were just thinking and you're in love and, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, no. But it ends up working out in the end. And they had a second, they agreed to give something a second try. She had to go back to where she lived, and she promised that she'd return. And, the butch was not so sure. But she did return, and they did start again, and it ended up, the distance and whatnot, and ended up being a good thing. And then she's like, I want you to know that this is what happened. And she's like, I felt so bad because I let it get that far that I wasn't able to be honest with you. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. I didn't think, I didn't expect that to be the outcome of what happened, because obviously that's why they fade to black, so you can be like, oh no. Mm-hmm. But that's good plot writing. And if you make things too easy, people are like, I could put your book down and not pick it up again. Not because it's bad writing, but the tension's gone.
Right.
So you have another book in your Playing for First baseball series called Third to Home. Can you tell me a little bit about it?
From Third to Home continues the story of Amy Perry playing professional baseball for the Cincinnati Reds, and Lisa Collins is the sports writer that covers the Reds beat for the online, the Reds network online, and travels with the team and all that. And then there's the partners of, they come back with Frankie, Lisa's partner, and Stacy, Amy's partner. I am in the middle of writing it, literally in the middle of writing it, and I've had some trouble getting back into my writing mode. And I think some of that, I just haven't been feeling very well. I'll be having gallbladder surgery here soon, so I think that's part of it. Mm-hmm. But anyway, not that everybody needs to know that. But that's one of the reasons I haven't been able to get my shit together, so to speak. But I really will finish this book. Anybody out there that loves this series, that's been writing me and asking me when's the next book going to be out, because I don't know how many of my books said coming soon. And I think it was at least. I know it was at least 2 books. I don't know if it was 3, but it's 3 now, definitely, because in To Love Free, it actually says, that it's coming out. But I know I wanted to put, really, honest, it's
I totally mean it this time.
Yeah, and I think I had some trouble getting back to it because it was my dad's favorite book, because he was a big sports nut, and but now I think I need to finish it for him, and I need to look at it that way. Mm-hmm. And then the romance I have coming out later in the year will be More Than a Song, and it has main character of a bookstore owner and a vet, and then this smoky sounding blues folk singer rolls into town and kind of causes a lot of problems. And Phyllis,
those darn troublemakers.
Phyllis loves this book. She said, you have to finish that and get that out. And it's done. It's just, I know I need to go back, and I wrote it right after I wrote Playing for First, and I am looking at it literally like an editor. And, just going through it and track changes and making changes. So I know that book will be out later in the year. So,
well, I'm sure it will be fantabulous. I have yet to read something of yours that did not touch my heart.
Well, you.
And I adore having you on the show. And maybe once you have accomplished your promise, you can come on again.
I will definitely do that.
Okay. Thank you so much for being my guest again.
Well, thank you, Liz. And again, I know I've said this to you before, but thank you so much for all you do to support lesbian fiction. And now you're out there publishing books too. So this is super. And I'm really happy for you. And I look forward to reading your next one too.
Thank you.